Hello and welcome to the Tavern Chat podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tenkar, and this is another of our designers and makers series of fireside chats. We haven't had one of these in a couple of weeks. Stuff that's been going on at the Casa de Tenkar renovations, and you don't control the schedule of renovations, as I have learned. But in any case, I have with me Rokoma from Saga RPG. I probably should have asked you what your true first name was, but that crosses me.
No, it's Jessie.
Jessie. That's probably easier for me to say than Rokoma. At least I won't. At least I won't screw it up. But
yeah, I think that name goes back to some old time when I first started Discord for some game or something.
Oh, listen. Tenkar was my. In the last AD&D 1E campaign that I ran, it was an NPC of one of my players, and then became like a party henchman, and then became the name I used in EverQuest and everything else. And when I started doing social media, and I was an active cop, I was like, "Oh, I can't use my real last name on social media."
Well, of course not,
guys. So I Tenkar, and here I am. Dozen years later, I can't use anything else because people are like, "What's your last name, Stina? What the hell is that?" So yeah, it becomes part of like who you are designated at. So, like I mentioned before we started recording, I'm going to ask you a number of questions, like I ask everybody, to get a little background into you, and we'll move on to the sandbox or the hex crawl or whatever you want to call it. It's certainly not on Rails. Certainly not scripted. So it will go where the conversation goes. So my first question to you, Jessie, is how did you get into role-playing games? What was your first experience like?
Oh, let's see. That was a long time ago. I've always been into, the nerdy things of books and games, video games and whatnot. And I think it was like 5th grade. So I'm like, 11, 12, something like that. And Recess, back when we got Recess.
Oh, yeah.
Some of us were putzing around. I think it was a board game. I forget. I think it was like Marvel Superhero something, board game. We were playing in the library. And then that same group of people, it went from that to, I think there was Palladium for a while. That we putzed around with in junior high. Yeah. A little bit of Riffs and whatnot. And eventually Dungeons and Dragons sort of came in, somewhere in the junior high level, so 2nd edition. Even that, what was it, the basic one they had, AD&D, not 2nd edition, but mostly 2nd edition. And then it's sort of done most of the things ever since then. Some with the same group of people, after school, weekends. I've just been doing it since, that was the early 90s. So however long the heck that is.
Early 90s, about 25 years, give or take.
Yeah, something like that.
That's a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and for better or worse, I've got my kids into it, so they are all excited to do it, and turn my boys into little nerds like their dads. So that's all good.
Yeah, see, that's where I mean, I'm not saying that my son isn't. He's 25. I'm not saying he's not a nerd, but his generation is all computer stuff. Never interested in playing D&D or fancy role-playing games, but he loves the massive multiplayer online RPGs. Can't get him off it. And when first time he saw me running a virtual tabletop, he was interested because it was on the computer. And then he goes, "What kind of graphics are these? Nothing's animated." I'm like, "Yeah, all right." Well,
yeah. We've lost it at that point.
Yeah, kind of like, okay. I tried. I guess I didn't succeed, but I certainly tried.
My kids have this like wild imagination where they're just like, when they were younger, they were making up games because we limited their computer time, and so they had like Samus from Metroid was fighting Harry Potter, fighting I don't even know what. And I was like, there's these things called role-playing games that basically gives rules and numbers to what it is you guys are doing right now. And Palladium didn't fly so well, so I still had some old those stuff. Apparently, Pathfinder seems to work out well with the kids. And they'll read rules and they'll be like, "Yeah, Dad, this is the rule." I'm like, "It is? I've been doing that wrong for almost 20 years. My bad."
Well, it's funny because my niece is 8, and she just wants to be like Uncle, and she wants to play Dungeons and Dragons. And the first time when I got when Swords and Wizardry Light was first put out, my God, 3 years ago almost, and I showed her a print copy of it. She grabbed it and she went, "Uncle, this is Dungeons and Dragons in 4 pages." I'm like, "That's right." She goes, "You can teach me to read at 5. You can teach me to read 4 pages, then I can play D&D. You wrote this for me." I'm like, "Well, technically, not 100% true, but close enough. I wrote
Yeah,
it
we're
to
gonna just
you."
go with it.
Yeah, and she loves all the terrain that I have. I mentioned that I was doing some renovations here, and I realized that I had some Dwarven Forge boxes,
Oh yeah.
Kickstarters, that I never opened. Like I would open up the main box, open up one of the inner boxes, and go, "Oh, cool," and then just put it underneath the sofa. Because to clear out space, I've been going, "Shannon, here's another box of dungeons." She's like, "Oh my God!"
That's awesome.
Yeah, I actually have a video of her explaining this dungeon that she built with some of the Dwarven Forge stuff, and she's explaining how, "Well, you see, Uncle, this is the treasure room, and this is a trap. It's a pit, and if they fall into the pit, they never hit the bottom. But the treasure really isn't the treasure. That's fake treasure. The real treasure is here in this other room." And I'm like, "Shannon, aside for the dungeon board game, who have you been playing D&D with?" She goes, "Nobody, Uncle. I just know it." I'm like, "Wow,
That's some pretty solid design work right there.
that's why I've told her after I gave her the other boxes over the course of last week. I was like, "You got to make sure any dungeons you do, your mother has to take pictures. I want copies. I might use them later." So now you've mentioned Palladium, and that's interesting because I mean I find the Palladium system to be very derivative of AD&D, like first edition AD&D, but extremely house ruled. For Palladium Fantasy, I love the default setting. I love the Wolfen. There's a lot of stuff that I would love to just steal, uh, lock, stock, and barrel for my D&D or Swords of Wizardry campaigns. I know Kevin's a little antsy about his IP. I don't even know if I could use it in my own private games the way Kevin gets about some stuff. But we played the shit out of Rifts
Yeah.
in my 20s. And part of that was because the one Gen Con I went to, which I think was 93 or 94, with a couple of friends in my gaming group, that's how we came across Risk for the first time. And we spoke with Kevin Thambita and Kevin Long, and we had them sign our books that we bought at the table. And my original Risk book is dog-eared, even though it's a signed copy, because we played the crap out of it. But the rules were, I don't want to say that they were broken, because when people think of broken rules, I don't know if they really think of how broken Risk was. But it's something that you house ruled at the table. Like, I didn't run it, I was always a player. My friend Dave would just house rule it at the table, because he would be like, "Yeah, this makes no sense. The setting material was amazing, but the Mega and the MDC and the SDC damage didn't mix very well, and didn't make
not at all.
Yeah, it didn't make very good for I want to play a Vagabond." Okay, so what do you want to play for your next session, because you're not going to be alive? It was like that, but the setting was so amazing. I'd love to see a 5e version of it that I have to putting out, but yeah.
I've seen, I think I Kickstartered, it was Rifts for Savage Worlds game system.
Savage, yep, and I have it. Not bad.
And that wasn't bad.
Certainly.
That wasn't bad. It's almost needs a full revamp sort of from the ground up, and you got to take what actually works in the system and get rid of what doesn't, because someone rolling up with a dragon with cybernetics, magic, and psionics is just not going to fly against like basically almost anything else. And you go, okay, well, let's make that choice. We're not going to put that as a player option. But just the whole backstory and the way that they took like our world and just went forward with it in the future was, I don't know. There was something to that was just really sharp. They did a really good job on that one.
The setting itself and the source books, whether it was it the Vampire Kingdoms, which was one of the earlier ones, that was top. The source books are very imaginative. They got great ideas, and I think that's where Kevin spends his time these days, is thinking up more source material, and he's less worried about fixing the system. I mean, how many times has D&D been revised since Rifts came out? Right,
a bunch, yeah.
Yeah, we got 2E. So we had 3E, 3.5, 4E, 4E, whatever those soft cover books were. Pathfinder is basically a rewrite of D&D. 5E.
Oh yeah.
We're still working on the first Rifts books, the first Rifts system, which even Kevin will say is broken.
Yeah, it's like the rules in like Palladium and the TMNT. I had some fond memories of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness.
Right.
It like worked at like one level, first and second level, but there wasn't a lot of like playtesting and scaling for some of the higher stuff. And like you said, with like SDC and MDC, a lot of the different systems, if you just focused on one, like everybody's got a mech. Okay, that'll work. But when you start mixing the different pieces, and then just things sort of spiral out of control, and it never really melded together. The other thing I loved about Riffs, and I think just the artwork that they got in a lot of those books was fantastic. And this is back in like 80s and 90s when like a lot of the 2E art, like the 1E, 2E art was really campy. They hadn't quite gotten into that groove of some of the later third edition Pathfinder, some of those canonical artists who are just putting out some fantastic stuff. So Riffs really was, I think, sort of cutting edge at that point with the really just high quality art. Maybe some of the line drawings were a little simplistic in a lot of those Palladium books, but some of the full page paintings that they had in there were just amazing. Like the cover of what is it, the Atlantis book, or maybe even maybe it's the core book where it's like a floating Atlantis thing, and the guy's got the girl and the slave. I mean, that's just an amazing piece of artwork.
But even their black and white art is like it's really closely based off Kevin's original line art that he did, even for the original Palladium stuff. So it's the same styling. So whether it's him or I think Timothy Truman, who became a big comic book artist after his work on the initial Palladium book, you can see that there's a lot of stylistic choices that are made to keep these artists on the same page, whereas in 2E, unless they were trying to, ape Jeff Easley and a few others, there wasn't any consistency. I think that was some of it. You had some that was very cartoonish, and then you had some that was very serious. Palladium tended to have it had a look, and it kept to that look, and it was stylistically a good choice.
Absolutely, totally agree.
So then I was going to ask you what's your go-to system, but I think your go-to system happens to be Palladium.
Well, I think our go-to is probably the last pile of years for our gaming groups has been Pathfinder. Most of the stuff we've done has been Pathfinder themed for the last, I guess actually since Pathfinder kind of came out, once we got into like 2E, we did a lot of 2E, and then 3E, 3.5. And then when Pathfinder and 4E kind of came out, we dabbled a little bit in the 4E, didn't get a good vibe from it, and then went over to Pathfinder and sort of stayed there. Now, system, like source world wise, campaign setting, I think Rifts is probably still one of my favorites.
Okay.
I've never been a Pathfinder campaign setting fan. Things are just, every country is based on some good stuff, so you can kind of grasp, oh yeah, that's what these people are, that's what these people are. But then you look at it from a whole world, you're like, well, why does that country live next to that country? Because that doesn't make sense. So it's sort of a disjointed puzzle piece. It's never quite grabbed me the same way as like old Greyhawk or Eberron or some of the old D&D campaign settings.
Which is funny because we were talking on the Breakfast Club earlier about, Forgotten Realms and how Forgotten Realms suffers as a game setting from there being too much campaign material out there, and as a GM, you're almost, you collapse under the weight of it, especially if you have players that care about consistency, because there is just so much history to it. Whereas
there
something
is,
like,
and I think that's, especially with Forgotten Realms, it was developed over so many years, and not only just the actual books themselves, but like the novels and all of that stuff that sort of built up the backstory. Kind of like, Dragonlance had some of the same issues because there was so much player knowledge of the overall world from just all the fiction that had come out that it's hard to find a spot to fit in a campaign that doesn't get bogged down by all that stuff. I think you're right. Absolutely.
Which is, it's a shame because, I mean, Forgotten Realms is a good setting, but you almost feel like you need like a Forgotten Realms Bible before you can actually try to run it. And there's also been a lot of things that have been retconned between editions, and I think I stopped.
True.
I stopped really. I mean, I thought the third edition Forgotten Realms like core book was very well done, very well presented, and was great. But then after that, it just became too much. And I'm not even a person that played 3E. I had the rule books, didn't have a group at the time, but I still wanted to keep up with the setting material, and I couldn't. I collapsed under the weight of what was coming out.
Yeah, I don't think I kept up like after second edition, like in the 3E. I had a little bit of the Forgotten Realms stuff, but I think most of our gaming ended up like in Greyhawk, and so I had the generic source books. So I think as a comparison to that, some of the other worlds that were lesser developed hit the ball a little bit better. I think Eberron, at least for the first year or two after it hit, it had that good mix where there was enough backstory, enough information of the factions and the world and the continents and all that other stuff that you could go, cool, I can fit into this and it'll work. Later, I don't know, I haven't kept up with it as Eberron in 4 and 5e, but that's something you said sparked something. Actually, besides Rifts, I think my all-time favorite setting, it's really Dark Sun. It was great back in 2e. Never had a good 3e version, and I saw a little bit of what they did in 4e. It's one of those things that just doesn't really translate well to some of the later D20 systems just because of the weird crap they did back in second edition with Dark Sun. But there was just enough material that you could fit in a campaign into the overall history and backstory, and it would work. But most of the stuff was like in that one region, and everything beyond that could be anything. And that freedom for a DM, I think, is a good thing. And like Forgotten Realms as the other counterpoint is there is no freedom. Everything was well documented, well defined.
Yep.
So you had to sort of fake it till you make it. I do miss my Dark Sun days. I'm not gonna lie. I always did love that one. They had good art too.
Dark Sun had
darker
good
style.
It had good art. The one thing about Dark Sun I didn't like was the flip book adventures. They were just.
It was a neat idea. Yeah, it was a neat idea.
Practical.
And it didn't work very good. No.
But I did like that with Dark Sun. What was it? Every character started at 3rd level, so you had survivability. Yeah, because it was a very lethal setting, and also you pretty much had like a stable of characters, if I recall correctly, that you could have, like, in between adventures, you might swap out, your gladiator for your defiler. And so when one character leveled up, you could level up one other character, so you kind of weren't leaving people behind. It allowed some flexibility in your party, and nobody had to get bored playing the same
Mm-hmm.
character. So was
Yeah,
that's something?
I think that
Yeah,
sounds about right. Yeah. There's
yeah,
some that.
something similar to that. That's something that I'm wondering if I should at some point write something up like on a blog for a way to do that with some OSR gaming. That's an idea. All right, well,
It is. We do something similar if we have like a large group. If everyone's playing like two characters,
mhm.
you know, divide the party. Okay, I'm gonna take this character and go here, and that character, whenever the party is going up to do different things, you can focus on just the one character instead of both characters. Mix it up a little bit. That's a little not quite as dynamic and formalized as the stable, but
Right. Well, it was an interesting way to handle it, and also with a system that I should say a setting that was as lethal as Dark Sun. It also meant that, okay, half the party wiped. Well, you still have viable characters waiting to replace them that you have some attachment to.
exactly. Yep.
So, all right. So you came in at least on the D&D side with first edition AD&D.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't play basic.
I don't think I played basic, and I barely touched first. It was mostly probably second. Mostly second.
Yeah. I remember my experience with basic was, and I think I was 12 or 13 when I was introduced to AD&D first edition back in 80, 81. Why would I want to play basic if I can play advanced?
Mm-hmm.
Basic was for the children. Advanced was for the older players. But basic differed from advanced in one important way, where if you played a non-human, a demi-human, it was actually a class. So you were playing the elf class, the dwarf class.
Yep. I remember that. I never had to do it myself much, but I do remember that being a thing. Just very interesting.
Right. Well, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a viable way to play, or?
I remember, I think third edition had like a monster book where you were playing a monster class, and that made sense since you wouldn't just throw a troll or a dragon into a party and have it be balanced. So they were trying to make it, a 20 level progression for a monster. In that sense, I think that works, or that can work. Just having, I think back with basic and some of that earlier stuff, you were, like level 10 was, oh man, you're top of the game. There wasn't much beyond that.
Right.
And so with a lot of the other systems going to 20 or wherever, I'm not sure you could really get enough like diversity of power and progression with just, I'm an elf. Well, what is a 20th level elf compared to a 20th level fighter? What does that mean? And what would you have to do to make it actually function? So I'm not sure that would work, at least in a lot of the current systems. The old system was something that's actually like, okay, random human versus big monster. Obviously, the human's going to die. That I can see turning it into a class, a progression. But just a random human versus a random elf, it's basically the same thing. So what's a 20th level elf? I'm just not sure it'd be viable in a lot of the current ways.
Fair enough. All right. Well, here's something that if you've played any version of D&D, this has certainly come up. Save or die. Oh yeah. Not just what is your opinion on it as a mechanic in game, but what are its pros and cons?
That's interesting. And we certainly do still joke about that from back, save versus poison or die or whatever it is. I think it's something it should be there. At least I dislike this 1d20 roll is going to determine whether you live or die. And that's, I think, a rough thing to do. Consequences to failed saving throws absolutely should be a thing, right? Otherwise, what's the freaking point?
Right.
But having the entire destiny of your character off of 1d20, that's a bit harsh. But later in the game, where it's something where you have options for recovery or resurrection or what have you, I think it's absolutely viable. You're encountering more intense and dangerous things, whether it's more vile poison or Das Uber necromancer or whatever sucking your soul,
right?
And without the risk of something like save or die, those more powerful soul sucking poisonous necromancers lose some of their flavor and their potential for being a hard powerful antagonist. Like, he's a soul sucker, but it's not actually going to suck my soul because there's no saving throw for that or whatever. So I think it's like a balance that they've done. I think they've done it better in some like the third and later editions, where though you don't encounter those kind of things at say first level. I remember certainly some second edition adventures where like your first level and the first thing you come up to when you're getting into the gate of whatever the castle was save versus poison or die. That's a little rough for say a first level character who has a crappy saving throw and no options for recovery. Whereas
right.
Later you've got some ability to kind of maybe you can have a reroll or some immediate action for a bonus or something, a resurrection, so that it's like, okay, now you're at later levels, you're actually at the point where save versus something or die should be a thing, used sparingly. It shouldn't be something that's all the time or random. It should have, the character should almost see it coming and know, okay, yeah, this is a big deal. You better make this saving throw.
But and that certainly to me is part of it. Save or die should be either hinted at. It shouldn't be that you go to open up the first door to the castle and it's save or die. You're reaching that, I don't know, apex of the adventure. You're coming across the room with the big bad guy and the artifact treasure. You should expect that it's going to be protected by something that's going to be quite lethal. That's fine. Save or die as you're randomly walking down the hallway. I don't see it. Should be, dare I say it, part of the story, not a random element of the story.
Absolutely. I was just thinking the same thing, where when it's a known story element, something that helps drive forward the story, then you've got the nail biting aspect of it, or the characters can prepare or whatever, and it helps the tension and it helps move forward the plot, but it's not a super random effect where it just kills a person because you didn't know it was coming, or when the DM was just being a little heavy-handed with the traps or whatever. Power word kill in a hallway.
Oh, God.
Okay, well, that's, or symbol of death, or pick your poison, if you will. It certainly needs to be used sparingly so that it maintains the appropriate plot effect and is sort of fair to the characters. But at the same time, the characters need to understand that especially at the higher levels, death from one failed roll is a possibility, and sort of know it's coming.
Yeah, and I'll even go so far as to say I believe it also system dependent. If you're playing Pathfinder and you have a save or die, and your character dies and was ninth level, and now you have to re-roll a ninth level or seventh level Pathfinder character, that's a session.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. That's between sessions. That's not during a session.
Well, you might be doing it on the side as you're got all this time because everybody else is playing, but if it's in an OSR game, you can have your character up and running again in 10, 15, 20 minutes tops, depending. So I do think there is some of that element too, which is why gameplay changes a little bit between editions because of the expectations of how much survivability is built into your character.
Mm-hmm.
With AD&D, maybe I was, by the time I hit 56th level, I was planning on what my fighter might do at ninth when he got to Stronghold. But with a game like Pathfinder, you're planning out 20 levels often before you've hit your second.
Oh yeah.
Because if you don't, you're just going to screw up on the feats you're taking. You're not going to take them in the right order, and suddenly you're not going to be the character you planned on being. So there's that aspect. I got one more question before we start hitting the free ranging part, and this is the question that often gets people to really stop and think. You came into gaming 10 or 11, so you were preteen. What would that preteen you who came into gaming think of you now when it comes to gaming? What you're involved with, what you've accomplished? What would they think?
That is interesting. I don't think preteen me would be terribly surprised. We were making up our own campaigns, making up our own rules, running things back, just between the two or three of us or whatever.
Right.
Back then, and for the most part, that's the same now. Even if it's just running the campaign for the friends, for the kids, creating material for the publishing company, of course. There's not a lot that's sort of very different. There's more effort now as we're older, and what we're putting into the stories, and the systems and the gaming and whatnot. But I was doing some of that back then, a little bit at least, running the campaign, trying to come up with good stories and tweaking systems as necessary, which all is just an extension of what I'm doing now with the various games that we have running.
Okay.
I don't know if preteen me would have maybe be surprised by the amount of effort and time involved in some of these things over the last number of years. Like, what the hell? What are you doing with yourself?
Well, I think that when our younger gaming selves, a lot of us had these dreams of being involved in a hobby as we got older, being, professionally involved. And I don't think that any of us could foresee where self-publishing or small publisher publishing would get to in these days. I had no clue. My dream was to somehow move out to mythical Lake Geneva and be part of a creative team, and then quickly realized, well, that isn't going to happen, is it? But if I had gone through it in a day and age where you had tools like InDesign or even just Word for Windows, where you could lay out a basic product and get it out there to the public, not just on like a mimeograph or an early Xerox, but published on demand, print on demand, I would have blown my mind.
Yeah, it's a radically different environment then than it is now. it is. I find it very amusing, sort of watching my kids as they play, and sort of the stereotypes that come with different types of gaming. One of my kids is like the rules lawyer, and he's really good at remembering what specific rules are. And one of my kids likes to play the overpowered character, either a monster class or whatever the heck it is, and just kill everything. My third kid wants to do the crazy stuff, like I'm a goblin rogue who's pretending he's a cabbage while he's hiding, and just really just bizarre. He likes playing unique, different things, not that are overpowered, but just that are different, really bizarre things. Like and it's always like the small monster classes, like goblins and gripplies and whatever else. And he's a little shorter for his age, so maybe that's part of why he wants to play short characters.
Okay.
And I looking back, I see it. They're trying to do these really crazy things, and I'm like, at some point, I want the balance of, well, you shouldn't do that because it's overpowered. But then I remember some of my friends playing Rifts and doing really stupid things when the Palladium, was it the conversion book, came out, and suddenly you've got Jotun juicers running around just destroying everything. And I go, okay, well, yeah, I guess we did that, didn't we? So maybe I shouldn't tell my kids should stifle imagination, because I'm like, oh shoot, we were basically worse. So because they had more books, and it's really kind of funny watching some of that and how the different play styles of that I have within me of occasionally I'll make a class that's broken or a character that's broken, and I definitely remember the rules, and I often try to do unique things. I see like those three pieces in my little spawn, which is relatively amusing. And they're making up worlds and making up stories and writing them down and sort of push and sort of let them figure out their mistakes like we had to 25 years ago.
Oh yeah. And that's, to me, that is the most joy I get out of it, is when you get to share the hobby, share the excitement of gaming with the next generation. Like with my niece, she's just like, Uncle, when I turn 10, you're gonna start taking me to conventions, right? I'll be old enough. I was like, well,
yeah,
we'll start
we'll see, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
they weren't quite into Pathfinder yet years ago. But now that they've played, they're like, when can we go back? When can we go back? And I was like, I don't know. It's really far away. We'll see.
Yeah, it's just nothing beats that excitement that they have. I mean, that's like your first experience in gaming, at least mine, was magical. I still remember doing the one-on-one dungeon with my character named Cyrus. I can only think was named after Cyrus Vance, which is scary. But my fighter killed a bunch of skeletons and goblins, and at the end, my DM had to call a friend because he didn't own the player's handbook, just a DMG. And this is back when every phone call was like 10.6 cents for the first 5 minutes, and then like 2 cents a minute after that, or whatever, however expensive it was for a local phone call. And he had to go, 2000. All right, well, you had 2005 with your 10%. And it's like, oh, cool, and I was hooked. That was it. I was over and done. I was hooked and went out, and I got my Lord of the Rings trilogy with The Hobbit and my 4-book paperback slipcase, and the rest of my life was over and done. And there's just something that doesn't compare to that. I mean, I think I've stuck with gaming all these years to always try to recapture that magical moment, and you can't. However, you can help provide it for new players, and I think that is why it becomes such a joy to play with young players.
Yeah, I think for me it was probably the play game TMNT. I loved the cartoon when I was a kid in the 80s. And oh wait, there's these rules, there's these books that'll let me do this myself, make my own mutants. That's like amazing. And down the rabbit hole I go.
Yeah, and again, it's that magic that hooks you. I've known people it's like, oh yeah, I played Dungeons and Dragons for a year in high school and never went. When I was a cop, you bump into people like, oh, you played D&D? I played that back in high school, and here they are 20 years later, never played again. They never got bit by the bug. It never was that magical experience, I guess. If you got that magical experience, it's a hard addiction, I guess, to let go. Although addiction might be too big a word, but I guess when I was in college, I was an addict, so.
Yeah, it's fairly appropriate.
Yeah, it's like, gee, hang out with my girlfriend or play D&D. Sorry, hon, we're playing D&D. Oh, you want to go away for the weekend? Well, I got to be back by 3 p.m. on Sunday. Because, yeah, I've got the game. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's important to find the spouse and significant other that's able to understand and provide that freedom, even if he or she doesn't play. My wife, she understands. She'll listen to me and the kids say,
right.
What neat things happened. But for the most part, she's like, yeah, she gives zero shits. Doesn't really understand it herself. She'll play board games, and that's fine.
Right.
Card games or whatever. But the whole role-playing thing, she's like, yeah, no, that's just fine. Absolutely, totally fine. But she's certainly supportive and allows us to do these things and will patiently listen.
When I met my wife, I come back to role-playing games due to virtual tabletops. And she was great. She's like, hey, you got a regular game. You should be socializing and playing it. You enjoy it. And that's great. And she encouraged the blog and encouraged the podcast. I was like, oh, crap. And then my first North Texas RPG Con, which, God, 6 years ago, first convention I'd gone to in over 20 years. I was supposed to go with a friend. He wasn't able to make it. Monetary issue. So my wife's like, well, you already got the hotel room. Just, I'll go to the convention with you. I'll play a game or two with you. But, it's in Dallas. She's looking up, where she can explore in Dallas and Fort Worth and all this stuff. She has these great game plans going. We arrive on Wednesday. By Friday, she is telling me, and I put her in every game I was in. By Friday, she was telling me, we're coming back next year. I'm like, I haven't even explored Dallas yet. Where I'm having a great time. These are great people. This is a great community. I'm coming back next year. I want to play. I'm like, holy shit. And
where does this come from?
Yeah. And she goes, like, I get to go to, 4 or 5 conventions a year now with Frog Games, and she goes to them all with me. Works the table. I'm no longer playing in games. I run a few. She's playing in games that I'm not running. And I'm like, really? You give it that? She's like, yeah, as long as there's a heavy math. She just math intimidates. But as long as she's playing something like Swords and Wizardry with this, low math threshold. If I introduced her to Pathfinder, I think that her brain would melt. She would not be happy.
So no role master for sure.
No role master. Not unless you're playing, I guess, with Fantasy Grounds built-in tables that they have for that one. Listen. I enjoyed Rollmaster and Middle Earth role playing. Had a blast. Yep. I had a blast running it. And it was like, I like the 66 criticals better than the 00s because those are just more gruesome. But
yeah, I always thought that was really neat that they had that one random one where 66 was horrible in the middle of the table.
Yeah. So we had a lot of fun with it. It was a fun system. But you couldn't do long campaigns because usually after 4 or 5 sessions, half your party was crippled. They had all these injuries that were long-term injuries that were -20 to this and -15 to that, and movement is slowed by a third for the rest of your adventuring career because you're partially gimped. It's like, no.
I did like. I never played it very much, even if I'd acquired like in a garage sale a whole stack of the books. I liked a lot of the flavor that they had with like the magic system. They had, hundreds of tables, whether you're casting
a
water spell, an ice spell, a plasma spell, a fire spell, this spell. And it was just, the number of options and choices were just mind-blowing.
Yep. And even character classes that you wouldn't normally think would get spells had their own spell list.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool. It didn't really translate very well to Tolkien's default setting. It was a little powerful for on the magic side. Not everybody should be getting animus spells or whatever else it was. I mean, 70% of player characters had some kind of a spell list available to them. But it was a lot of fun to play. And that being said, the adventure material that was set in the Lord of the Rings setting was top notch. The maps, research into it was really awesome. Not that you would necessarily play with any of it, but if you treated Middle Earth as a historical world or something that had actual history to it, it was very true to that history.
Yeah, it was. I think that was one of the things I liked the most about it, because I was, like every 12-year-old that's in this field, Lord of the Rings was fantastic, and reading all of those and diving into all the other sci-fi fantasy stuff. Back then, there really wasn't. Gosh, what was this? Like, I guess the mid-90s, there wasn't really a good Middle Earth system. We didn't have like Middle Earth D20 or anything else. So if you wanted to get into that sort of Lord of the Rings side of sort of trying to role play, that was basically the only option. And they had mechanics for every freaking character that was like in any of the books. Even like the Silmarillion had stuff for it, which was fairly impressive.
No, it was. I think the last couple of years are, in a way, a reflection of that era. We have resurgence in RPGs and things breaking out and carving out their own little corner of the RPG universe themselves, and it kind of reminds me of that era right before D20, where all these different companies were really trying to push stuff before D20 and the LGL came out, and kind of steered it all in a different direction, I guess.
Yeah, but that was an interesting resurgence too, because then you had everything D20. Wheel of Time D20, Star Wars D20, modern D20. The OGL certainly did an interesting thing to the gaming business, whereas prior to that, it seemed, and I was young, so it's hard for me to really say with a great deal of veracity, but it seemed like it was kind of hard to sort of break into the field, because there was D&D, second edition was probably the biggest thing floating around. And then you had the few smaller things like maybe Shadowrun and the old Star Wars system.
Fast.
That was about it. And then D20 happened, and it was,
D20.
Say versus D20 or die.
Well, and you might be a little bit too young to remember the DC explosion when DC raised their comic book prices from 35 cents to 50 cents and tacked on an additional 8 pages to justify it. And then 3 months later, knocked the prices back to 40 cents and went back to their original 18-page length or whatever it was, because the explosion became an implosion. And with D20, the explosion became a glut. And then we had the implosion, and then the removal of the D20 system license because of perceived misuses of it. So there was a time when you go onto like eBay and get D20 books by the pound almost. It would be like,
Yeah.
Fast Forward Entertainment. We're selling Fast Forward Entertainment books, $2 a piece. You know, we're shipping 80 pounds of gaming material, which I did buy. And honest to God, I did. And I got this huge box shipped to my house and went through it over the course of 3 days. And I think I kept 2 books and literally tossed the rest.
Wow.
That's how bad the quality was on the Fast Forward Entertainment shit. Because that was part of that glut that ruined the gaming marketplace for a number of years. People thought it was a quick cash cow, and it fell apart. I think that part of the great thing about now is with print on demand, you don't necessarily have to worry about this glut where somebody's going to have 2,000 copies of a book in their living room that's not selling. You don't have to put out so much money that can cause, on a personal level as a publisher, that can cause an implosion when you can have books printed as your customers want them. It's not perfect for the marketplace. It doesn't work for every company, but it certainly is an interesting counterpoint to the glut that we had at one point with the D20 market.
Yeah, early 2000s, there was a lot of stuff coming out. Some of it okay, some of it not so much.
Yep. I mean, God, it was. That's when like everybody was trying to put out their own D20 version of a Supers game. It's like, I got to convert this one to D20 and OGL it. Yeah, I think out of that, the only one that really survived was in Masterminds.
Yep, I think it's probably a fair statement.
Yeah, like Silver Sentinels was somewhere on my bookshelf. That was one of the early ones that was going to be a quote big hit. It just was not. But we've been talking now for like 3/4 of an hour. We haven't spoken about Saga RPG. What the hell happened, dude? I blame you.
Probably should. Well, see, my role is more managerial than anything else. So, Nick and Lars do all the authorship.
Okay.
And most of the authorship. I've got a plot on the back burner for when we have more bandwidth. So I came in a number of years ago, mostly just to pick up some of the slack on some of the InDesign work and the layouts and the editing, because Nick and Lars just didn't have the time to do. And there's 2 of my friends from my local gaming group. And one of our 4th guy, he was just getting slammed at work, Curtis. It's an interesting way of looking at it because I'm aware of the full document, or at least what we're trying to put out of the full document, looking at the InDesign, so I can direct. For the last 10 years doing scientific research and some project management, have developed other schools or skills, like personnel management, if you will, to go, okay, guys, here's a deadline. I need this piece of the thing finished this so that I can finish the layout for here. And they're like, okay, yeah, I wasn't working on that, but we can totally do that. And start moving things forward. We had a big lag from when our second big product came out. And then the third one, spit it to market a couple months ago, give or take.
Okay.
There's a big gap in time. And a lot of that was, I think everyone has real day jobs and just being slammed for time. We're pushing hard, trying to get our 4th big piece out. And it's interesting seeing some of the things that I've, as like a DoD civilian, project management, program management, timelines, schedules, milestones, and deliverables, trying to apply those skills to keeping Nick and Lars on track. It's kind of interesting. It's like develop, look, I have these real skills from the workplace and I can apply them to making my friends do shit. That's kind of cool. I'm a little bit behind right now just because I moved to the West Coast and I haven't had a house for a couple months and internet and things of that nature. So hopefully we'll get back on track and push out. It's actually not too far from a release. I was hoping for this spring, but hopefully it'll be early this summer once we can get some of the pieces together. If I can keep those guys from just writing too much. Like, oh yeah, I did these 8 pages on this side quest. Like, why? We don't need that. But it's good.
Right.
Like, fine.
I was inspired. And that's, sometimes you have to strike while the iron is hot. I mean, you know that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I asked for like a 2-page. I need like 2 pages to fill this gap in the document. And I get this like 10-page masterpiece. Like, what the crap? That is not what I was going for.
Stretch goals, man. If you're going to kickstart, these are the stretch goals. They're already being done for you.
This is true. This is very true. We did try a Kickstarter. Didn't make it. Yeah, and you know, Cleo on text is completely right. Like a side quest book. There is definitely some stuff in the current product we're working on that I was able to convince the guys, no, we're going to pull that out. You know, because there's the 4 iconic PCs that we threw in for the players, kind of like some of the B20 iconics or whatever. Or here's your pre-generated character, but we gave them backstories and some side quests. And somebody had an appendix. Like, we're going to do this thing in the appendix. I'm like, how about we do this? We're going to pull all that out and tiny little controllable size documents instead of these massive. I think our last release was something stupid, like 150 pages, just because of all the material in it. And the current one is morphing into something like that. No, let's take some of that stuff and try to get some smaller, more easily digestible pieces of side quest information to sort of round out those iconic PCs, as well as providing, well, actually, for that one of the things we're hoping to pull off is, and I'm not sure how well it'll work, we'll have to find out, because each iconic PC has a side quest, like a sidebar in every adventure or every other adventure that sort of pushes them all along a little bit with some of their backstory. And usually it's like, did you find the missing shipment at this one encounter? You know, if you're playing that character's backstory, here it is, and then you can deliver it and you get a small reward or whatever. Nothing significant that would take away from the main part of the story. So what I'm hoping we can do is like an iconic PC side quest book, right? One per each, with an encounter designed for just that character. So basically like a one-shot, short 10-page encounter. But what I'm hoping doesn't fail miserably is the fact that it's meant to only be an encounter scaled for a single PC. So a 10-page encounter that only the wizard character gets to really partake in. But what will be weird is balancing that for a single character. There's a gunslinger, since this is Pathfinder based, there's a gunslinger, I think it's a wizard, a monk. I forget what they are. I should know these things. You know, for a rogue, maybe you throw a bunch of traps at them, but trying to come up with something, I don't know if it'll work or not. It might just totally fail. But something that just that one character can solve by themselves, whether that's combat or non-combat or whatever the case may be, which helps in the publishing size, because then I can pull some of that material that they wanted as like an appendix. I'm like, well, the appendix is already huge. We need to slim this down, guys, and pull that out into something else as a one-off, if you will. So for the most part in Saga, that's sort of where I come at it, is the project management and the InDesign, which, you know, Nick and Lars have done a little bit of with the InDesign stuff, but I think it's helpful, you know, division of duties and resources. So when they're focused down on the authorship level of, this is all the crap I want to write, we need this, you know, this encounter, this story, this whatever, and they can focus on that, while I have to focus on layouts and, okay, I need a page and a half, or I need a half a page here of art or something to fill this in, take out text from what they did because I need to remove a line. It's just all that nitty gritty layout InDesign BS that I'm sure we all love, lots of love. As well as, okay, I need these documents. I need this by next week. All right, we're having a meeting next Monday. Where are we on these 10 items? that I'm tracking. Oh, I totally forgot. I need to do that. You're right. We did talk about that. Note taking, schedules, all that other fun crap. It's like, oh, goody. I get to come home from work and then go back to project management of a different kind. Instead of research, it's creating role-playing content.
Well, there could be worse. I mean, hey, listen, I laid out my own Swords and Wizardry Continualite. That was about 16 pages, and the nicest thing that was said about my layout was that it was serviceable and readable. but being that I don't know layout for shit, I'll take that. If somebody who's skilled was told that about their work, they'd be upset. Somebody who has no layout skills, that to me was like, all right, I'm happy. At least I got my passing grade, a D+.
That's where I'm at. I had zero InDesign stuff prior to this. Open it up. Okay, what buttons do I push? No idea. At least the previous products existed, and we were near the end, so I just had to tweak and edit and finalize. Like part 3 of our 5-part thing. Okay, so that's some of the stuff I got to do. Now I got to create it from scratch for the next one. And so it was a good point to enter into the development cycle of, okay, here's this thing that's mostly complete. Start getting the feet wet of, okay, I just need to tweak a little bit. Oh, that's what happens when you do that. Oops, I shouldn't do that. And then when it's now how do I build this thing from scratch myself? At least I had they had templates and a lot of other stuff that they'd already put a couple of years of effort into creating, and I could reuse a lot of what they had. But I'm still a novice when it comes down to these things. But Google is your friend, right? It's like, how do you do this? Oh, that's what you do. Okay, got it.
Well, we also have in the designers and makers section here on the tavern an area where it's pretty much a group help section. You can ask questions, and others that have gone through your issues, especially with InDesign, will throw helpful ideas out at you. Some might work, some might not. But that's been a well-received feature of the Discord amongst people that do their own publishing. Because if somebody else has already had to go through that struggle, why repeat it?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes perfect sense.
So we're looking at, we said, what, summer for the next release?
I hope so. So let's see, first, that's broken up into 3 pieces. First 2 pieces are probably done-ish, right? Most of the initial pieces are there. Some of the encounters in the sort of sandboxy second piece should have been finished since I had asked them to do so, and then I lost internet because of the move. So hopefully they're ready to go, and I just need to finish the layouty stuff. Third part's close, and the appendix is close.
Nice.
So I'm really hoping for this summer for the next one.
Well, as I tell all my guests on these firesides, please reach out to me when your stuff is released so we can make sure that the community knows what to look for.
Will do.
So, I don't know if you realize this, but yeah, we've hit over an hour. I got to say, these firesides go by quicker and quicker as I've done them. And I'm saying that for somebody who's been holding a dog in his arms for an hour, and it's like, it's been an hour already? Holy shit.
And I don't think I've heard the dog the entire time, so you must be doing something right.
Yeah. She's just, falling asleep in my arms. If I wasn't holding her, she'd be in the bed next door to this room. And I said before the show, this house was built in 1905. So these 2 rooms, the bedroom and the computer room, are joined by an archway. It's not even a doorway because you had a fireplace on one side of the house and you'd have the kitchen stove on the other, and that's how you heated it. So, so she would just be looking at me from the bed going, and so it was a much easier decision to say, you know what, I'll just hold you. She
Hey, whatever
is a
works.
sweetheart. Yeah, you know, with the cat, all I gotta make sure is that she's fed before the show and she's good. Yeah.
See, and these are those lessons learned that, from the first couple times you do it, you're like, oh, that totally didn't work.
Yeah, it's just like it was worse before I got the wireless headset. Once I got the wireless headset, if she wasn't in the room and started whining, I could walk over and grab her. Without the wireless headset, it's like, oh geez, how long can I put the headset down to grab the dog
Mm-hmm.
and then put it back on with one hand, which I've learned is not an easy job to do.
No, it's not.
So,
It never goes well. Then you pull the cables out, and all sorts of bad things happen.
yeah, well, if I pulled the cables out of my computer, it would probably just crash onto my desktop face first because all the USB ports in the back. That would not be fun.
Yeah, and that would be probably a bad afternoon. We don't need that to happen.
No, I would pass on that. But Jesse, man, it's been a good time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was good. No, this was fun.
All right, well, we're gonna wrap it up. If you would do me the favor of some links in the tavern chat, in the text channel, I will include it in the podcast notes for this episode when it goes up tonight.
I'll see if I have some. I don't think I have them offhand, but I'll get them from Nick. We'll
All right,
provide you something.
Fair enough. I'll just want to make sure the link's there for and make it easy on them. Because I know Google is your friend, but sometimes people's Google foo is not what you think it is.
Oh yeah,
I couldn't find
definitely
it.
provide something.
Exactly
right.
Yes. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up today's Fireside chat. Again, thank you, Jessie, for spending time with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
As we wrap up the initial round of interviews, I'm sure we'll be going back and asking if they want to do a second round. Maybe when you guys have a release, we'll grab one or two of you and do this again.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
All right. Excellent. Well, folks, as always, be safe, be healthy. God bless. Be nice well. And I will reach out and talk with you all tomorrow. Later, folks.